And we're live. Welcome back to the Big Fish Little Fish podcast. I'm here with Teo DeBress, and we're already having a good time. We're already talking about the topics that we're excited to talk about. We're talking about Nayib Bukele, president of El Salvador. He's had a lot of successes, and he's only had one term. He just started his second one, so this is fifth. He's going into his fifth year, and he talked about a lot of what made his country successful in such a short amount of time. And we felt like a lot of the things that made these people successful are pertinent to a lot of the topics that Teo and I discuss on the Big Fish Little Fish podcast. So, Teo, do you want to say anything about what we're discussing today?
No, I think that was an interesting point, though, is that when we watched it, we were kind of like, well, what did he talk about? And we listed out the topics. We're like, those are all pretty familiar things that we have said are things that could be addressed in the U.S., and it's like completely separate from that. We were just saying like, hey, these things could be worked on. So I know we talked about a few different things. We talked about building infrastructure, housing, crime, the economy, and we added one, which is just the age of the politician. I guess that kind of ties into what we did too. So I don't know. I just think that it was a very relevant conversation. So maybe what we could do and how we talked about it was like reacting to what he said and then giving our thoughts on each of those topics. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And we can also just go into side tangents about other things that he said that may have struck us and maybe we reflect on, how does that really sit with the common American, or how should that sit with those people in power currently, right?
And it's pretty cool. I mean, you're El Salvadorian, and that is the president of El Salvador, and it is like, hey, you have a connection to that country and to the U.S., so I think you give a pretty unique perspective in general, which is you're both El Salvadorian and from the U.S., so what are your thoughts on Bukele? What are your thoughts on how things are going here? And you're a good channel for both sides of the thought.
Yeah, I would agree. My father's side of the family is from El Salvador, and they came to this country in the 80s. I was born in 92. So, just hearing from my family that grew up there, and then family members that go back and forth over the past years, did leave me with a lot of thoughts based off of this interview and based off of things I've heard. But I think one of the really cool things about all of this is I'm excited to go back to El Salvador. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and this is one of the things that solidified my decision, although I already decided prior to this that I was going to go back, because I haven't been back since I was about 12 years old, and a lot of that's due to logistical reasons as well as safety reasons. But that being said, definitely changed my mind on that. So what was one of the first topics you want to talk about, or what do you think?
Well, he mentioned a few things in it, so we kind of jotted them down, but one of the things he was saying was the building infrastructure or the economy. We could do either of those. Like he was mentioning, those are two things forward-looking that he's focused on. He's already done a lot on crime, and that was his big thing from the first term that he's really been known for. So we can talk about his past term, or do you want to talk about moving forward? How did we get here? Maybe we start with that. You can talk about it. It's a really good point. You're saying you're excited to go. We have talked about for years going to El Salvador, but we were always like, it's not safe.
Yeah.
It literally was a reason to not go before, was El Salvador was not safe, and now we're planning a trip there because that culture has completely transitioned where you do feel comfortable going now. That's pretty drastic in just a number of years.
Yeah. Well, the gang problem in El Salvador has kept many people, not just from not going back, but their descendants, people who grew up in El Salvador, or who grew up in the United States, kids of immigrants who just been like, you know what? Why would I go back if I am in danger of potentially losing my life or losing property or experiencing something terrible? It's kept a lot of people back. But that being said, it's not that most people want to go back to their motherland, their roots, and get connected with old family members, or feel a sense of camaraderie with their friends and family members from the motherland. But that barrier of the gangs was a big deal. I remember when I was 12, and I went again when I was I went when I was 9, and then I went again when I was 12. And I remember both times being out there, They were like, don't walk around at night, especially by yourself, as well as don't wear anything at all that could make someone even consider robbing you, right? So don't wear a necklace, whether it's real gold or fake gold. Like, don't wear it anywhere. Don't wear a watch. Don't show off anything that shows any sense of like wealth, because it could be like a big neon sign that says "rob and kill me," right? and that's something you didn't want to deal with. And especially, if you're a parent taking a little kid, you probably are even going to tell them. I know my grandma told me, like, don't play with a Game Boy, don't play with anything that indicates that you are by any means someone who has something, right? Almost like try to look as like, poor as you can. Do your best to like not indicate that you're from America. So I remember that struck me a lot. And I'm not saying that you necessarily need to go around El Salvador now with 10 chains on and stuff, but I've been seeing a lot of people go back to El Salvador who are like, hey, I wore whatever I want. I didn't have any issues. I didn't feel like there was anything pressing my life. There's a drastic difference from before Bukele's presidency to what it is now, and it's a dramatic change, and I think that's like so important. And I guess the way I kind of look at it with like parallels, like for example, there's certain places in the United States where you probably shouldn't be like wearing jewelry out and walking around at night, and because you're in fear of your life, you feel like you might get robbed. And then there are some places in the country where you don't have to worry about those things at all. You can walk around at night. You can wear whatever you want. The chances of you getting robbed are slim to none. And I think that is what sounds like they're starting to experience in El Salvador, which I think is a beautiful thing. Because at one point, El Salvador was the murder capital of the world. And, Bukele was talking about how when he took over, he knew that he was going to have to address this gang problem. And the thing that struck me when he was talking about how he was going to, attack this great force. Well, first of all, he discussed there was 3 days where over 80 people were killed by the gangs. It was in a retaliation to the tactics they were using. And one of the first things he did was he prayed. He prayed with his administration on asking God to give him the wisdom to not attack, but asking God to give him the wisdom on how to settle down this huge gang problem. And you know what? It's a gang problem. It's not going to be an easy peasy situation no matter how you cut it. More than likely, you're not going to be able to to counsel these people back into submission. You're going to have to use some forceful tactics. And he was concerned about who would actually like be affected by this, right? Because when you're dealing with these gangs, it's not like like all the gang members hang out in like a crack house. No, these gang members are living among family members and friends, and sometimes, depending on how deep in the gangs they are or how brainwashed they are with that community, they may or may not stick out, right? And they may even have like people who are like half into the gang, half out of the gang, and so it can get really messy trying to clean this up. And he prayed to God to give him the wisdom on how to address this as sensitive as possible, right? Because the last thing you want as a leader who's trying to get rid of a problem is to create a solution that's worse than the problem, right? He doesn't want to just go around killing everybody in sight in order to get rid of the gangs. No, he wanted to do this tactfully in a way that hurt as least victims or as least innocent victims as possible. And I found that very special, because most politicians nowadays are they like, at least in America, if they are devout if they are devout in their religion, like truly religious, whether Christian, whether Catholic, whether Muslim, whatever the case may be, do they publicly profess their faith? You know what I mean? Like, they may be like, oh, I'm Catholic, but do you ever see them be like, hey, everybody, let's pray and go through a prayer with a big group of people? Or let's say if they do it behind closed doors, do they openly say it in front of the world? Because that's the thing. That's the one thing I was thinking. I was like, not just did he have this prayer, he didn't have this prayer and he's like, all right, guys, don't tell anybody they were praying that God is going to help us get rid of this gang problem. No, he prayed and then told Tucker Carlson, who has one of the biggest networks in the world, hey, Tucker, I prayed about this. You know, when he did that, he's doing, number one, giving the glory to God. Number two, he's telling the world, hey, this is my religion. I stand behind it. I don't care what anyone has to think about it. And I'm giving substance to the fact that I made this prayer. And three, it's causing people around the world to talk about the power of prayer now, because I'm talking about the power of prayer now. People, I'm sure there's plenty of people who are from El Salvador who are like, wow, like our leader prayed to figure this out. Well, maybe if our leader is doing that, I should be doing that with my problems. So, you know, hats off to him for not just professing his faith, but witnessing to the world about the power of prayer and how that was able to cure his country's biggest problem. Because if you are so afraid of gangs that you can't run a business or walk down the street without being robbed or having a kid go to the park without having to worry about being abducted, normal life can't happen. And those are some of the reasons people left El Salvador. And now that that's gone, and they talked about it in this interview, those are some of the reasons that people are thinking about going back. That's some of the reasons I'm going back, because I know I can go out there and not really have as big of a fear as I would have had before if something terrible befalling me. But that's just a side rant that I kind of went into. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts on all that?
It's pretty crazy to see that the change and how it happened. I think so often we all have gotten into this narrative in the U.S. that you can't get things done. And it seems like because of our systems in place, whether it be, you know, our politicians or our government agencies or just the groups that are tasked with certain things, most people feel like things aren't possible anymore, that you can't address a crime issue, or you can't address a, you know, medical industry that's broken, or you can't address like these big ticket things. And I just genuinely believe that it is possible to change the things we have that are wrong in America, but it takes a few things to get it done. One, it takes people coming together, not dividing apart and having polar opposite views. You have to agree somewhat that there's a problem and how you're going to address it. You have to be able to think of a solution that's actually going to make a difference. You can't just say these things or have buzzwords or throw money at a project. Do you actually have a logical, thought-out plan for how you're going to fix a problem? If not, then don't throw money at it, because that's just how you make a problem bigger. You have to be able to have the backbone to say, hey, you know, this is a tough situation. We are going to address it, and it's not going to be perfect on how we get there. There will be some frustrating points or pain associated with getting to the solution, but this is so bad, we have to do what it takes to get there. And it's not going to be easy, but it will get done. That's the type of mentality you have to have. And I think that it shows a tale of two cities. It shows two different ideologies. There's the I can get it done mindset, and then there's the that could never happen mindset. And if you see something and hear a solution proposed and your knee-jerk reaction is that could never happen, you need to look at how you view the world as well as how you react to things in your life. If you don't believe something's possible, and if you don't get enough people in agreement that that's possible, you're right, it will never happen. But at the same time, if you get a collective of people to have a mindset of we will solve this no matter what it takes, it is shown time and time again, where you're talking about El Salvador and Bukele, or you're talking about other situations, when you get a group of people together with the same mindset and a preset goal that they're working towards, anything's possible, especially in America. America is the country that proved that. And now I honestly think it's a little embarrassing that we look at El Salvador and Bukele and the things that were done there, and we're like, wow, look how amazing that is. Other countries used to look at the U.S. and say, wow, look how amazing they are. That is the U.S. role, is to be the guiding light on how to get things done or how to do things the right way. And it seems like the U.S. has had a mindset shift where now it's more the head down, we have problems, kind of like almost like America's the favorite in a basketball game, but the team's losing. So they got their head down and they're pouting and they're like, blaming each other and they're divided. No, America's the favorite. America's supposed to win. But the problem is we're not acting like a team and everyone's just having their head down and pouting. You got to come together and you got to work towards the goal. You're the favorite. Get it done.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, no, I think it is hard to meet some of those objectives. You were saying, you have to believe it, and it's not going to be hard. You have to really like grind it out, especially at some of the more difficult times. One of the things that, and it's kind of funny you said that, one of the things that struck me about what he was saying was, you're mentioning how America at one point really had it together, and everyone was looking at him, man, how did you do that? That was a hard thing to achieve, right? America when it comes to building industry, America when it comes to becoming an independent country and become a superpower and build up their military force, and also just like build camaraderie. I think a lot of what made those things, because becoming a great country we all know it doesn't happen overnight. We all know it's not an easy thing to do, because every country in its own right is becoming, or is trying to become, a great country to some degree. One can argue, right? But at least starting out. In America, one of the things that America used to be is a very religious country, right? We were Judeo-Christian principles. That was a lot of what started America, some of the founding principles. I mean, the discussion of God is written throughout a lot of the early documents of the founding fathers. And I'm sure that they did a lot of praying when they had to deal with the problems that were ahead of them. Yeah, I know there's some deism discussed, but at the end of the day, they were deep intellectuals. They are going to talk about things that it's going to get deep. And sometimes the answers for things aren't super clear from the Bible, and that's why they pray about it. But, to piggyback off of how when things get hard, you have to be able to really, keep your eye on the prize. One of the things that Bukele was talking about that I thought was interesting, because you can kind of see it here, but he was talking about how at certain times he's been criticized for how he's actually gone after a lot of these criminals, right? They were asking him, are you, giving everybody a free trial? What about their human rights? And he said something that I thought was interesting, and you'll see when I actually put it together. But he said, well, what about the human rights of people being able to, live their life, have a pursuit of happiness, if you will, right? Being able to walk down the street, kids being able to play, women not have to be fear of being assaulted, right? And he was like, I'm going to put the priority of the common, hardworking person in El Salvador over violent criminals. That's just what he said. And it's a common sense thing, right? In America, in certain places, it seems like the welfare and the well-being of the average Americans who are working every day and becoming a positive impact in America, their priorities aren't being prioritized. And I'm not talking about with just crime. I'm talking about with everything, right? Because now we're looking at how the American government isn't prioritizing Americans, it feels like. They're prioritizing a whole bunch of random things. I mean, we talked about it on one of our last podcasts. They're prioritizing funding wars overseas, all over the world, right? They're prioritizing, I don't know, what stupid project are they prioritizing? We have real things that are affecting real Americans that aren't being prioritized. We can focus on that, right? The Baltimore Bridge, we have no idea how long it's going to take to rebuild that. We talked about that a few months ago. I don't even think they've started rebuilding it. And what's it been now, 2-3 months? That's crazy. That's one of the most key points of infrastructure in the DMV. And I'm sure they're probably still taking bids on who's going to take up that contract to fix it. And also, in the Salvadoran president, one of the things he was mentioning is if that happened in El Salvador, it'd be 1 year, 2 years max. And one of the things he mentioned is we're a poor country. We have little resources compared to the U.S. The U.S. has, and we all know this, the U.S. has unlimited amounts of money when it needs it. If it needs to pucker up $300 billion to send overseas to, annihilate people we don't even know, but somehow it doesn't have the funds and the means and the resources to rebuild a bridge or to fix up a chemical destruction out in the middle of Ohio, or to deal with the wildfires in Maui. Name any natural disaster or non-natural disaster that's happened in the United States, and it's still in the works of cleaning up. What about the electric car chargers, right? We had the infrastructure bill Biden put out. I think they have like 11 electric car chargers. It's been 3 years. They built 11 chargers or 12 or whatever it is. I don't care. If it's not a few thousand, it's unimpressive. This is terrible. I mean, where do we get off taxing Americans and then nothing's getting done? And then Bukele's over here ending crime. And then we want to look around and be like, it's the liberals' fault. It's the conservatives' fault. Bro, it's all of our faults. We're letting these clowns run the country right now. It's disgusting. I'm disgusted. What happened to this country? Oh my gosh. I went on a side tangent. But I'm just saying, I think it's awesome that he saw a problem in El Salvador and said, you know what, I'm going to prioritize the common person. So be it. I'm going to get criticized no matter what I do. Like, let the chips fall where they fall. And you know what? Reasonable people look at that and can understand that. And the vast majority of Salvadorians in the country, out of the country, look at that and go like, it's not perfect. Just like all things in the world and all governments. But damn it, it has some great results. And you can see it's much better off than it was prior in all facets. So we need a little bit more of that over here, because if we took that mindset and we applied it here, I mean, we talked about this earlier today. It's not like I'm 31. I haven't had a president in my lifetime that was out here changing the country drastically in my lifetime to make these vast improvements in areas that really needed to be addressed. For example, the healthcare system. I know we've had Obamacare, but I don't think anybody in the country is like, wow, the healthcare system really got fixed. And that's not on Obama. That's on every president that I have been alive for. Why has that not been fixed? Why is it so expensive to get everything done? I find it very hard to believe that we have all these experts who can't come together and fix anything. As a matter of fact, everything gets worse. The health in America, not just is it the cost harder, the overall health in America is terrible. They're keeping us alive, but it's not like a good alive. People are miserable the closer they are as they get older. It's terrible. That's a whole nother discussion. But it's just like, when are we going to fix anything? I don't think anything's ever been fixed since I've been alive the more I think about it. Has anything been fixed in our lifetime? Anything. Think of a big issue that we've ever had in America that's been fixed during a presidential run. Or over 2 or 3 presidential runs.
No.
I've had the same problem since I was born.
They get worse.
Yeah, they've all gotten worse. In wars, healthcare's terrible. Inflation consistently is going up to some degree. What else? Housing hasn't gotten better. And housing's, and we can get into that next, actually, now that I know that was a topic we were going to touch on. Housing is terrible in America, right? Everyone's complaining. They were like, the housing market, it's so hard to buy a house, like all this stuff. So true, but I've talked about on this podcast. You want to know how to fix the housing problem? Build more houses. It really is that simple. Supply and demand. Add more supply. The government. Imagine I did the estimates. how much it would cost to build 10% more houses in America, bro, China built too many houses. We built too few. It really is supply and demand. El Salvador has a housing problem, and the president was talking about, guess what? Our GDP construction went to 20%, and we're going to address this housing problem. Now, until it's actually addressed, I can't really say if it's going to get addressed, but I will tell you something. He's fixed a problem in El Salvador. It wouldn't be a shocker if he fixed another. You know what's shocking to people right now? That there's an actually good president in the world getting things done, making his country much better. That's what's shocking. When you see a great leader, everyone's like, whoa, this has got to be a scam. This can't be possible. No. What you're seeing is a good leader, and it's making people upset because they don't know how to factor in, wow, you know what? Maybe his policies don't align with the things that I believe. There's something fishy going on. This guy couldn't be actually a good leader, could it? Well, he is. Fortunate for the people in his country, and unfortunate for the people who run ludicrous governments throughout the world who now are being put on blast. Because their wonky government has to look at that success and be like, no, our policies are going to work. Give it another 40 years. I know they worked the last 40, 50 years, but they will work eventually. We're just going to counsel these people to death until they figure out how to live better. No, this is exposing swamps all over the world. And that is why so many great countries have been condemning this guy. Kudos to this guy. He's going to fix the housing problem in El Salvador. I expect it. But you go ahead and talk about housing.
Oh, I don't know. Just keep going, man. Just keep going. You on a roll, man. Just keep going.
I'm on a roll?
Yeah, just keep going, brother.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I do go on a little bit of a rant right there. But you know what? Now that I'm still going, I also want to put this out there, right? One of the things that he talked about is, and I'm gonna butcher the word because it's a word I really haven't used so many times in my life, but I believe it's, and Eugene, you can correct me. He's addressing the diaspora of the world, which I believe diaspora is essentially when a group of people from a certain part of the world are dispersed around the world due to many reasons. Many people from El Salvador are thinking of moving back to El Salvador. And I've been seeing this in the Salvadoran community a lot in the past 2 to 3 years, right? I've been seeing a lot of friends of mine who, they not just are they thinking of going back to visit, but they've already gone back and visit and been like, yo, El Salvador is great. I love the community. I love the people. I love the food. I love everything about my homeland. I'm thinking about buying a place out there. I have heard from other people who are thinking about retiring there, just selling all their assets and then going back to El Salvador. And, for a lot of people, that was actually the dream. The dream was go to America, save up money, send it back home, build a little house, and then when it's time, retire, head back to El Salvador, live out the rest of your days. But a lot of people didn't end up doing that because they were like, you know what am I going back to? There's crime. There's a lot of, there's not a lot of opportunities. The shifting economic climate may be too much. And none of my family would ever really consider going back. So why would I go back? But now people are like, man, I may actually be able to go back. I may actually be able to be buried in my homeland. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Even I have thought myself, maybe I'll buy a little condo on the beach. But that's just something that struck me. It's just a rapid change within the community that I thought was very beautiful. And, if he addresses the housing problem down there, that could be something that booms over the next 5 to 10 years and brings a lot of money and opportunities to the country. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that when you have a country and people are all over the world, they're constantly looking at what places are better than where I'm at now. And I think one of the most unique things about the U.S. is that I've never heard of massive amounts of people wanting to leave the country, despite all the things we talk about. We can talk about America's problems all day and long, but we're still in a country where the percentage of people who want to leave the country is tiny in comparison to other countries. I know many other places around the world where their immigrant mentality or emigrant mentality is much higher. They want to go other places for opportunities or to see different parts of the world. Most people in the U.S., yes, they'll travel around, but they don't actually want to move other places permanently. And that's because America set up a country that gave you all of those key aspects you're looking for in a country. It gives you a place with safety. It gives you a place with the ability to express yourself. It gives you a place with the ability to build a better future and your next generation of your kin's future. All of those things are things that people who leave their country for those reasons. And what ends up happening is if you start to lose those things, it's not like America's guaranteed for forever that they're going to be the greatest country ever. It sometimes feels like Americans think that being the number one country in the world is like something that you just easily retain. That it's not like every other country in the entire world wants that title, and they're working as hard as they can for it. And then at the same time, when America isn't continuing to grow and isn't continuing to set new bounds on how good they're providing lifestyle for Americans, it shows that other places are now competing with the U.S. But the crazy thing is people still want to come to America. That's how special this country is. That's how special this country was founded, in a place where for 200 years it has been populated purely by immigrants. America has been populated by immigrants, and now look at it. It has 300 million people here, and more people would come here if they want to. And yes, we have problems in America, but at the end of the day, that is a gift we've been given. America has so many resources, like we talked about earlier, that it's not like we're in a country where we don't have the capability to make it bigger and better and all across a better place to live. And we have the people who should have an American spirit and culture, the culture that supports those three things we talked about. The problem is we got the resources, we got the system in place, which is what the founding fathers set up, but the culture of America is shifting. It no longer is that mindset we were talking about of, yes, we can do this, an abundance mentality. The world is going to look at us as if we are the shining light for how to be the best country in the world. Now it's a much more negative tone. People in America, they hate their neighbor in a weird way. It's so interesting because you talked about America was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And one of those principles is love your neighbor. That is one of the core tenets of the Christian faith. And it feels like America's gone in a direction where now you hate your neighbor. If you're not the same blank as me, I won't even have a conversation with you. We can't be friends anymore. That's not how America used to be. America didn't used to be divided to the point where you couldn't talk to your neighbor or you couldn't interact with your fellow citizen because of some ideological differences. That's where America's going, but it's not where we come from. We should be working to be closer together as a single unified America. Can you just for a second close your mind, or just for a second close your eyes and think about what other countries think about when they see the U.S. now versus what they thought about before? America used to literally be the country they looked at as a guiding light, and now they're probably laughing at us. With all the debauchery we have in this country and all the conflict and all the things that are falling apart, they're laughing at us. You would think that our enemies are plotting to, destroy us. They're probably just watching and waiting and saying they're doing it to themselves. We don't even have to do anything. Maybe we'll put a little propaganda in there and they'll take care of the job for us. Our enemies are realizing that they don't even have to send one jet across the ocean to destroy us because we're doing it to ourselves. And that's not how it should be. We should be coming together as a country and showing such a unified front and becoming such a strong country that our neighbors or our enemies are worried. They should be worried about us, not laughing at us. And we are so capable of doing it. We just choose not to. And it's 100% a mindset thing. Like, you can take... America could change overnight. Literally overnight, America could change, but we choose not to. Yes, the fast food industry is making us sick and fat, but you don't have to eat it. Yes, social media is literally corrupting our minds, but you don't have to be on it. Yes, our politicians are wasting our money and being corrupt as possible, but you don't have to vote for those people. The thing is, you have to be willing to make an active participation to change these things or to avoid them. And if you're the type of person who, if you heard those things or hear things of how things can get better, and you're like, well, that'll never happen, those are the people that are making it not happen. If you get a collective of enough people to make the right changes, the country changes. But we're not getting enough people to believe that we can make America better. They truly look around and they're either pessimistic or they don't want things to get better. It's sick. It's sick how people in America aren't rooting for America. You're never going to become a better country if your citizens aren't rooting for the betterment of your country. We have to stop fighting ourselves, and we have to stop believing that America can't do it. America can literally fix anything we want. Crime can be fixed. The economy can be improved. Safety can be increased. The healthcare system can not only be cheaper, but can also be better. Anything, pick a topic and we can make it better. But the only way that happens, literally the one and only way it happens, is if people come together and work towards it as opposed to divide and fight themselves. And when you see a country like El Salvador, again, it's embarrassing that we have to look to a country like that and be like, wow, they fixed a really big problem really fast. I wish we could do that. What do you mean I wish we could do that? America can do that. We're just choosing not to.
Yeah, I agree. And he talked about that. Bukele talked about that, how, his party had to join up with another party because their party wasn't even allowed to be on the ballot originally. He had to join up with another party. And it took a lot of work, but it shows that it took a lot of people to love and believe in their country and believe of doing things the right way and hitting goals in order for them to do that. And that's what we have to do here. People in America have to, as weird as it sounds, and it sounds so weird because that's how divided we are together. That's how divided we are today. But Americans have to come together. They have to rally. They have to focus on the things they agree on. And that's the thing. Most Americans agree on some of the same things. Everyone wants the opportunity to be able to work. I wouldn't say everyone, but I would say the majority of people. The majority of people in America agree on the same things. They want to live in peace. They want to be able to work. They want to have the opportunity for a better life. The opportunity for a better life, not a guarantee of a better life, because nothing in this world can ever be guaranteed to anybody. There are no guarantees in life. And they want to have a better healthcare system. They want a more reasonable way of living. And I think everyone can get behind most of those things. It just has to come together, And I think the majority of people can agree that the current people in power don't have our best interests at heart. Whether you're on the right or on the left, the majority of the people believe that. They think that they don't have our best interests at heart. And you can see by the way things are run in most states, especially, like, it doesn't seem like our best interests are prioritized. It's all these random things. And I think, but you know what? I do think people are waking up. Like, the more and more conversations I have with the general public, people in my day-to-day, I hear that the shift is changing, that America has to change in general. So hopefully, people are coming to this realization. Hopefully people start coming together. People become more united on issues. And we've talked about this, but in some ways, I wish there was a way we can just what did we say? What did you say? Questionnaire? Just get like a questionnaire of things that people actually agree on.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say we should have like AI president, but it's almost like We want something that prioritizes issues over people.
Well, definitely not an AI president, but I think that we have two problems at the same time. One, we have leaders and politicians who aren't prioritizing what the American person is prioritizing. The average American has different priorities than what our politicians are doing. But two, I do think, and this is really, it's not a popular thing to say, but culturally America has seemed to have lost its morality. I mean, what's happened to morality in America? Like, when you think about it, I think America has confused with what is allowed versus what is right. And that's a very different thing. America gives you freedoms to do certain things, but it doesn't mean you should necessarily do those things. We talk about the big picture stuff all the time and the big ticket items, but look at how Americans are conducting themselves. You are allowed, so you're allowed to be rude to someone in America. That is a freedom you have. But that doesn't mean you should treat someone rude, And I think what's happened is people have started focusing so much on what they're allowed to do with their civil freedoms that they've forgotten that there's a true morality we should all be following. And it's the type of thing where it's like, this is going to sound weird. How do I say this? Like, if everyone in America tried to act more like Jesus. Now, I didn't say that everyone needs to be a Christian. All I said is if everyone in America tried to act more like Jesus's model, showing compassion for the sick, the needy, those people who need our help, the sinner, showing compassion, but also standing for what's right. If everyone did that, do you think America would be better or worse? And then at the same time, if you're the type of person who you instantaneously got upset by that statement, you got upset by saying, try to act in a model like Jesus, are you so upset at religion that you're not willing to say that the morality that we should all be following can be agreed upon? And that's a weird concept we don't want to talk about in America, but that's what having a Judeo-Christian culture is about, is like, hey, there's the Christian model of Jesus on how to treat others, our fellow American and people around the world. You know what I mean? Whether you're Christian or not isn't going to be forced on you. But there is a way that we know that is the right way to act, and it's trying to follow Jesus' model. And we're all going to fall short, and we're all going to sin. But still, at the same time, the fact that there should be an agreed upon morality that we can't seem to come to, and you notice things getting worse when we get further from that, it's an unpopular thing to say today, but you can complain about politicians all day long, but if your people aren't following a moral code that helps each other out as a country and a community, I think that you're going to continue to have problems no matter who's in power.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know what? I'll take it even a step further. I think, and I guess this can go into a whole nother rabbit hole, and I don't need to get into that rabbit hole necessarily all the way, but we'll stick our toe in, right? Listen, there was a bigger separation of church and state in the 60s where they took like the Bible and religion out of schools. And there have been many different reasons they did that. I understand. But you know what else happened after that? There's been a much bigger, there's been more trouble with the youth ever since then. There's been a decline in, from my understanding, there's been a decline in certain educational standards. There's also been more activity that's been detrimental to people at a younger age. Christian principles, when they're taken the way they're supposed to be taken, not to an extreme, but in a reasonable way. They're built to actually take care of people. They're built as a guiding light on how to live your life in a moral way. And, if there's no talk about this in school, if there's no necessarily set standard of it in high school, people are young people are going to get it from something, whether that be music, the education system, which a lot of people have issues with nowadays. The influences on television, whatever the case may be. And who influences those people, they've been like all types of, and you can see now crazy people, right? A lot of the people that have influenced you at a young age, now you watch them older and they're nuts. They're nuts, but they influenced you and you've gotten older. And so now when you think back, man, I wasn't modeling my life off of the things I heard from, my religion, really. I was modeling off of this person on Nickelodeon or this person on Disney Channel or this person on this HBO show or this person on MTV. And you have to think about like how you've internalized those values. Those aren't necessarily the best values you should be internalizing, and have those values had you make questionable decisions as you've grown up, right? And I guess that's a little bit further off what Taylor's talking about. But Taylor's talking about, if you modeled your life based off of Jesus, and I'm talking about what if we had modeled the systems based off of what they had originally been modeled off, which was Judeo-Christian principles, where would we be at as a society now? Because society right now, there are huge problems in the family unit. And these problems stem from, people not committing themselves in more than one way, right? I'm not talking about just committing yourself to a marriage, but committing yourself to be an influence in your family to hold certain standards of morality, right? A lot of people in my age group, being a millennial, talk about like, oh my gosh, like, growing up, my parents didn't really talk to me about X, Y, and Z. So I just kind of like got my opinions from the television, got my opinions from music. And we should have been getting, like, if you are Christian, right, you should have been getting those opinions from your Bible, right? Or if you're whatever religion, got your opinion from your religion. But we've all strayed away, right? And it just makes me think. Taylor had me thinking about that. What if we had just stayed on the path we were on? We've strayed away from it, and we see El Salvador holding to it, and we've seen a dramatic shift in only 4 years. Imagine if there was that type of shift in the United States, from families and people committed to not just making the country better, but making themselves and their family better.
And I think the most important thing of that is there's only you can only control what you control. And yes, there may be big problems in America right now, but at the same time, you can control the problems in your personal life right now. So you're not going to be able to touch those ones that hopefully we can find resolutions to, but you can change your life today. And when you were talking about it, the family unit being such an important part of how you're raised, and we see it all across of America where like the family unit is not as connected as it was at one point in time. That's huge. You have to be able to have your people being raised by their families, and the more distress you have when you raise the children, the more it impacts you later on in life. And we can make a decision as a country. Add it to that list I was saying. Yes, we have, a lot of single parent households right now, but we can have people come together and stop that. It's not like you have to have that. We see these problems in our culture today. These aren't being forced on us. It may be harder to resolve them or to act differently than what the trend is doing, but we don't have to be confined to these problems we have in our culture right now. People can make a decision today to change their life, and that'll change their life and the life of those around them immediately. And if enough people do that, individually fixing their lives and coming back more towards what they should be doing, that is going to solve a lot of problems in the country as a whole. Not everyone, but some will almost self-remedy because we're fixing ourselves from the inside. We're not looking for the government to fix us. We're fixing ourselves and then making a better country that the government should be having to work with. And if they're continuing to mess it up when we as Americans are starting to do better and they're still botching it, well, then they got to go. I'm tired of waiting for our politicians to get better to fix the country. I would much rather we fix ourselves as a country and then get these politicians out. That's the way I see America changing. We're never going to vote in enough good people with this swamp we have. Why don't we culturally have a cultural movement across America where we fix ourselves and then get the bad politicians out, and hopefully at that point in time we can have a whole new crop of good politicians. The two things that impressed me the most about Bukele in his interview were, one, he was a Christian and he professed his faith and how it impacted his decisions as president of the country. And 2, he's young. And that's something we don't see a lot with our politicians. Young politicians professing their faith and making a country a better place. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a bunch of really good, younger, good quality candidates? Just if we just had a massive, not this election because we're already where we are, but that next election, we were having a difficult time choosing between how many good, quality, young candidates we were deciding between. But we don't. We're stuck picking or reelecting all these old bad politicians. I'm going to put this on the millennials. Until the millennial generation makes a decision on how we want to act, this country is going to keep doing what it's doing. Because right now we have all these old people who are in charge and we know what they're doing. And we're expecting them to change and start making things better. I can tell you the end result. They're not going to. As long as we have old corrupt politicians in, we're going to continue to have all the things that are wrong right now. The day millennials decide we're no longer going to play the blame game or play the victim, but we're going to actually come together as a generation, figure out what we want as a generation, and put forward candidates that represent what we want, that's when America will change. When millennials and younger people come together and decide that it's time for a change, enough is enough. Because the old people are the old people. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and you can't teach a corrupt politician how to be a good politician. It'll never happen. So why don't we give up on them and get young, qualified, good people and the country of young people as a whole to come together? I don't know. I'm ranting.
No. I agree with you. You know, it's funny because I wrote some of this down. The founding fathers were actually really young.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't recognize that. James Monroe was 18. Helping start the country. Aaron Burr, 20. And this is 1776. Alexander Hamilton, 21. James Madison, 25. Thomas Jefferson, 33. John Adams, 30. Paul Revere, 41. George Washington, 44. George Washington was 44. Which in today's standard, that's pretty young.
And he was the oldest one.
And he was, I don't think he was the actual oldest one.
But in that list you just said.
Yeah. I think Ben Franklin was actually the oldest one. I don't know what he was at this time. I didn't look that up. I was just taking some names. But, you know, if Bukele was thrown in there, right, 42, he's one of the older ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know we have a minimum age for president and, being in the House of Congress or Senate or, the House of Delegates. But that doesn't, like, we've talked about it. Like, should there be a maximum age limit? Maybe there should. Maybe we should be taking, more account people who are in the prime ages to really be able to, like, think through. Like, I totally understand having a minimum because you want people with wisdom and experience running the country. I'm with that. But we should also have a maximum. Because at a certain age, like, you don't have as much at stake as someone who is going to be living here for the next 40 to 50 years, And I don't think it's absolutely necessary that someone who's closer to 80 than 60 should be over here making these ginormous decisions. They're not thinking the best that they've ever thought in their life, no matter what side of the political aisle they stand on. That's something that, should be left to someone who have not just their best years ahead of them, but have a slew of new ideas. Because that's the thing, the world's evolving faster than it's ever evolved. I mean, as humans, everything we're experiencing is, due to rapid technological advancements. And if the person running the country doesn't have a solid grasp of what that is, that's another threat that's on the horizon. Whoever's leading the country should understand this at a very high level, or at least have advisors who do and are able to explain it to them at a very well. We're cooked. Like, I'm sorry to say it, we're cooked. There's gonna be some really bad challenges, and that's something that's not even really hit us as hard as some of the other challenges. If they can't figure out some of these other challenges that are, like, very easy to understand. Like, hey, there aren't enough houses. Build more goddamn houses. Hey, there are crime issues. Prosecute people who are actively breaking the law. Hey, there is giant inflation issues. Pump more gas, maybe. Listen, I'm just saying. These are all problems that can be fixed. We know this. We are the most powerful country in the world. We shouldn't have these giant holes in our game. They're easily pluggable.
It's the frustrating thing is when I listened to Bukele's interview, there was nothing mind-blowing he said. Everything was common sense. And the truth of the matter is, the fix for America's problems are all common sense. And I think that's what frustrates people. They try to think of these really creative ways to address things without getting to the root cause of it. It's pretty simple stuff that's going wrong in America and pretty simple solutions. You just actually have to have a collection of people who are willing to implement it. And because of having to consider every single person in every single way, it holds things back. The regulation we've put on ourselves is we've handcuffed ourselves. America has handcuffed itself with all the ways it prevents America from fixing our problem. You either have to be concerned about this law or this regulation or this type of classification. Like, you never can actually just look at the problem and say the solution because there's all these small legal details or things that have been written into law that make it so you can't do the solution. And that's why litigation is slowing this country down. We've lawed ourselves to death in America. At a certain point, America was about freedom, and they had some pretty simple documents, and they said, hey, maybe add a few amendments and think of some laws, but, get this thing moving. And then we just created law after law after law, and this law conflicts with this law, and this group conflicts with that group, so you can never actually get anything done in America, so we're all just sitting here just like arguing back and forth. The solutions are evident. Implement them, and then get the result you need. When you are so slowed down that something gets voted on and then a lawsuit gets brought on it, so you're in the judicial system, so you can't start development until you're through that phase, or you can't do this step because you're waiting on a response from this government group, or you can't do this because this group is lobbying against it. When anything that you want to start is immediately stopped because of our laws and regulations and groups, nothing will ever get done. It's just reality, common sense. If we want to get things done, we're going to have to come to an agreement and say, this is what we're going to get done. And if there's any little bits of topics that are slowing us down from getting there, we're going to have to overlook that for a period of time. And then when it's in a better place, we can try to fine-tune it then. But you can't fine-tune your way to a solution. You get to the solution, and then you fine-tune it. And America has so many things in it that you say what the solution is, and then you nitpick at it until you've nitpicked it to death and nothing happens. It's crazy. And I don't know. I talked about how the people need to change. I think that the politicians need to change and be younger. Like, I genuinely look at our politicians and I don't look at them and say, wow, if you were to list the attributes of this person, they are what I'm looking for in a leader. Like, it's not that crazy of what you're looking for in a leader to run or represent you. You want someone who's, tough against tyranny, whether it's, domestic or foreign. Let's protect our own people. You want someone that's compassionate for the needy. You want someone that's, able to understand the traditions of how we got to where America is and make sure we keep the most core principles of America the same. And you want someone that's young enough or forward-thinking enough that they can see what change is coming and react accordingly. I mean, what is that, 4 things? 5 things? Is that too hard? And we get these crazy politicians who are saying the nutsest stuff I ever hear, and they're getting elected on that. And I'm like, none of those 4 things I just mentioned are what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't even know what are they running on? They're running on like random topics that politicians created as the topics of discussion, but aren't really what Americans care about anyway. And that's what their ballot is being voted on. I don't care about half the stuff that politicians campaign on. They're that disconnected with people, and we still vote for them. I don't know, man. You go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much. Do you have any other topics?
Not really. I feel like in a weird way we kind of snaked our way through a lot of the stuff. Not exactly what I was thinking, but I think we talked about a lot.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it. The only other thing I was gonna say on the crime thing was, one of the things he mentioned is he had to fire his attorney general. It seems like it was due to not being able to prosecute people that needed to be prosecuted. And that's going on around the country as well. A lot of prosecutors are not actually keeping people in prison that are out here murdering or creating large waves of crime or attached to organized crime in some effect. Should happen. It probably should happen. That was the only note that I had. But you know what? I didn't really relate too much to anything, so I didn't really say
But I
anything.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I think maybe the number one duty of a country is to protect its citizens.
Yeah.
If I had to boil down the purpose of a government, that would be the first bullet point. Is the number one role in government is to protect its citizens, probably from foreign and domestic threats.
Yeah.
If it's not doing that, square one is not being fixed. Like, we're missing out on the first step to being a good country, and that's not a good trend. You don't want a country that can't protect its citizens.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, that might be it for episode 17. We have another episode coming out. Episode 18 is also in the works.
In the works.
So, shout out to Pope.
Yep.
All right.